I still remember the crisp December morning, the kind that makes your cheeks burn and your nose tingle, and somehow even the cold couldn't stop me from putting up the first string of lights. My family had been dreaming of this day for weeks, the day we transform our little street into a Christmas wonderland. We weren't talking a few blinking bulbs here and there. I'm talking about inflatable reindeer that danced in the front yard, a snow machine that covered the walkway in fake snow, and enough twinkle lights to make our house visible from space. The neighbors were already buzzing with excitement. Kids ran up and down the sidewalk, dragging ornaments and boxes of decorations. Adults carried trays of cookies, mugs of cocoa, and enough festive cheer to fill an entire hall. It was the kind of energy that makes your chest feel warm even when your fingers are frozen stiff. Everything was perfect until Karen showed up. You know the type, HOA president, self-appointed ruler of the neighborhood, armed with clipboards, rules, and the kind of frown that could give a glacier an inferiority complex. I spotted her SUV slowly rolling down the street, and I just knew she was coming for us. She stepped out, clipboard in hand, scanning the yard like a general inspecting troops before a battle. Her eyes locked on me, and in that instant I felt a chill worse than the December wind. "You know," she said, her voice icy, "this display violates several HOA regulations. The noise, the lights, the outdoor inflatables, it's excessive." I froze for a second, trying to process the sheer audacity. Excessive? For Christmas cheer? I forced a smile, trying to keep things light. "Karen," I said, "it's Christmas, you know, joy, family, tradition." Her eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules," she snapped. "If this continues, fines will be issued and complaints will be filed. Consider this your official warning." I looked around at the neighbors, who had stopped what they were doing and were now holding their breath like the tension in the air could snap any second. Some faces showed amusement, some fear. I could almost hear their thoughts. This woman cannot be serious, can she? I swallowed hard. "You're serious, aren't you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Karen doesn't joke. Karen doesn't bend. Karen doesn't do anything but enforce rules she seems to invent on the spot. Her lips twisted into a smirk, and I felt it, this creeping sense of dread. "Oh, I'm very serious," she said. "You may think you're above the rules, but I assure you no one is above me." And with that, she turned and marched back to her car like a queen leaving her court. The neighborhood exhaled collectively, but I could feel it. A storm was brewing, and we were right in the middle of it. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from that thrill of defiance. We couldn't let her ruin this. We wouldn't let her. I turned to my family, determination filling every word I spoke. "Okay, everyone, you heard her. But Christmas isn't about HOA rules, it's about all of us. We finish decorating, we start the party, and we show Karen that no amount of whining, frowning, or clipboards will take away our joy." The kids cheered, the neighbors laughed, and for a fleeting moment the threat of HOA tyranny seemed like a distant, absurd idea. But deep down I knew it wasn't over. Karen doesn't back down, and as I plugged in the final string of lights I felt her eyes on us, even from across the street. That night, as the first lights blinked on, I realized something important. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about standing up for joy, for community, for the little things that make life worth living. And Karen, well, she had just made it personal. I looked at the sparkling yard, inhaled the crisp air, and whispered to myself, "Let's see her try to shut this down." The next morning I opened my email to find it flooded with messages from Karen. My stomach dropped before I even clicked the first one. The subject line read, "Immediate cease and desist, neighborhood holiday display." I hesitated, half expecting it to be a joke. But no, it was every HOA regulation she could possibly reference, typed out with military precision. Noise violations, light restrictions, inflatable height codes. The list went on, like she had spent the entire night crafting the perfect storm to ruin our Christmas. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. I had always known Karen was obsessive, but this was next level. My heart raced, not just with frustration, but with that familiar spark of defiance. If she thought a few emails and threats could scare me off, she clearly didn't know my family or me. I read one line aloud, shaking my head. "Failure to comply will result in immediate fines and potential legal action." I laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "Potential legal action," I muttered. "Oh, Karen, this is just getting good." Before I could reply, my phone buzzed with another alert. Karen was driving slowly past our house again, her SUV creeping down the street like some sinister shadow. I could see her taking pictures of our yard from every angle, her clipboard perched like a weapon. Every time she looked at us, it felt like she was measuring our happiness and deciding exactly how much she could crush it. I glanced at my neighbors. Some peeked out from behind curtains, eyes wide with fear. Others whispered and shook their heads. A few braver ones gave me little thumbs-ups. I could almost feel the tension radiating through the street, like a storm building in slow motion, ready to hit us all at once. I knew then that this wasn't just about lights or snow machines. Karen had escalated it. She wasn't going to let this party happen quietly. Every moment we celebrated would be scrutinized, judged, and threatened, and she thought she could intimidate us into compliance. But I wasn't about to back down, not when this party meant so much to the neighborhood, not when kids were counting down the days and families were planning months in advance to come together. This was our moment, and Karen was about to learn that joy isn't something you can file away. I gathered my family and neighbors for an emergency meeting right there in the front yard. We huddled under the glow of string lights, plotting our next move like a team of holiday rebels. "Listen," I said, my voice firm but calm. "Karen thinks she can stop us. She thinks her emails, her photos, her threats will work, but she doesn't know the first thing about what makes this neighborhood tick. This party isn't just decorations, it's us, it's everyone, and she cannot take that away." The kids nodded solemnly, as if they understood the gravity of the battle unfolding in their own front yard. The neighbors exchanged glances, a mix of fear and determination. We all knew one wrong move could give Karen an opening, but doing nothing wasn't an option. I started making a plan. If Karen wanted war, we would fight it, not with anger but with careful, clever moves. I would document everything, ensure we followed the rules she was obsessing over, and make sure the party was unassailable. If she tried to escalate, we would be ready. Every decoration, every snowflake, every string of lights would be a testament to our resilience. That night, as the first stars blinked in the sky, I could feel her eyes on us again, even though she wasn't physically there. The tension in the air was electric, like static before a lightning storm. The neighborhood was quiet now, but I knew it was only the calm before the chaos. And then the chilling thought hit me. Karen was not just watching, she was planning. Every movement, every expression, every detail of our joy was being catalogued for some future strike. I shivered, not from cold, but from the realization that the war for Christmas had truly begun. I clenched my fists and smiled at the twinkling lights around me. "Let her try," I whispered. "Let her try. This year Christmas isn't just a holiday, it's a stand. And no HOA president, no matter how obsessed, will take it away from us." The morning of the party, the neighborhood felt electric. There was a strange kind of excitement in the air, the kind that only comes when everyone knows something big is about to happen. Snow machines hummed, lights twinkled in every direction, and the smell of hot cocoa and gingerbread filled the air. It was perfect, except for the knowledge that Karen was out there, lurking, waiting for her opportunity to pounce. I watched the kids dart across the yard, ornaments clutched in mittened hands, their laughter echoing down the street. It was beautiful and chaotic in equal measure. The neighbors were already gathered, setting up tables, hanging garlands, and sneaking in sneaky decorations that I knew Karen would hate if she saw them. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I felt that familiar knot of anxiety. Karen was going to show up. I didn't have to wait long. She arrived precisely on time, as though the universe had conspired to make her dramatic entrance. Her SUV rolled to a stop at the end of the street, and out she stepped, clipboard in hand, scanning the scene like a hawk ready to strike. She looked around, narrowed her eyes, and I swear you could almost hear the words running through her head. "This is unacceptable." She marched right up to me, her heels crunching against the fresh fake snow. "This is outrageous," she declared, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This party violates noise ordinances, property codes, and, oh yes, decorative regulations. You are in direct defiance of the HOA." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice and keep the humor alive. "Karen," I said with a calm smile, "it's Christmas. These are decorations, people are happy. There's laughter, children are laughing. How exactly does that violate the HOA? Her lips twisted into a scowl so deep I thought she might sprain something. "Rules are rules," she snapped, "and fines are coming if this continues." I looked around at the gathered crowd. The neighbors had frozen like deer caught in headlights. Some looked terrified, others were biting back grins at the absurdity of it all. And then I did something small but deliberate. I pressed play on a hidden speaker. Suddenly the neighborhood was flooded with the unmistakable sound of jingle bells, louder than ever. Kids squealed, parents laughed, and even the snow machine seemed to churn in celebration. Karen's eyes widened, and her mouth fell open, but she didn't move. The first real confrontation had begun. She gestured wildly at the lights, the decorations, the music. "You think you can get away with this?" she barked. I leaned toward her just slightly, in that calm but bold way that makes people pause. "I don't think, Karen, I know we're getting away with it, and nothing you do is going to stop this." She froze, as though my words had temporarily frozen her in place. The neighbors held their breath, watching this tiny battle of wills play out in the middle of our street. Children darted between our feet, oblivious to the tension, their laughter now almost defiant in its intensity. Karen's face went red, then purple, and she looked like she was about to explode. I couldn't help but notice the absurdity of it all. A woman in heels wielding a clipboard trying to dictate the happiness of an entire neighborhood. But I didn't laugh out loud because I knew this was just the first wave. Karen wasn't done. I turned to the neighbors and whispered, loud enough for them to hear but not Karen, "Don't worry, she's predictable. She'll get bored or she'll escalate. Either way, we're ready." And that's when I saw her take a small notebook from her bag and start scribbling furiously. Every time she lifted her head, her eyes darted from decoration to decoration, recording every little thing. It was terrifying and ridiculous at the same time. The rest of the afternoon passed like this, a mix of celebration and tension, laughter and fear. Karen stayed, hovering, scowling, occasionally muttering rules we didn't even know existed, but we continued. We carried trays of cookies, we sang carols, and we laughed louder every time she tried to make a point. The energy in the air had shifted. What she thought would intimidate us only made us stronger. As the sun began to dip behind the houses, casting long shadows across the sparkling snow, I realized something important. This wasn't just a party anymore, this was a stand. And Karen, she didn't know it yet, but we weren't just celebrating Christmas, we were showing her that joy cannot be regulated. And the best part, she had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, the tension hit a new level. I opened my inbox to see a flurry of emails from Karen and the HOA board, each one more absurd than the last. The subject lines were ominous: violation of HOA ordinances, immediate fines pending, and my personal favorite, legal action imminent. I stared at the screen, blinking. My hand shook slightly as I scrolled through the messages. The claims were ridiculous. Supposedly our inflatable reindeer exceeded the maximum height allowed, our music was disturbing the peace, and wait for it, our snow machines were creating hazardous conditions. Hazardous snow in December. I let out a slow, incredulous laugh, but it was laced with tension. This wasn't just Karen being obsessive anymore. This was Karen trying to scare us with the threat of real consequences. It was her escalation, and I could feel the weight of it, the way it settled over the neighborhood like a cold shadow. I looked out the window, half expecting to see her SUV parked across the street, clipboard in hand, ready to pounce. My neighbors were moving cautiously, peeking out from behind curtains and blinds, whispering nervously. Some of the braver ones came over to ask if we should just take the decorations down to avoid fines. Their voices were low, almost fearful. I shook my head. "No," I said firmly. "This is exactly what she wants. If we pull back now, she wins. And this isn't just about Christmas anymore. It's about standing up for our neighborhood, for our traditions, for what makes this place feel like home." I started documenting everything. Photos of every decoration, receipts for every purchase, videos of the kids laughing, neighbors enjoying the party, everything. Every string of lights, every snowflake, every cookie tray was evidence that we were not breaking any real law. This wasn't just preparation, it was armor. Then came the phone calls. Karen called one neighbor after another, demanding statements, threatening fines, insisting that someone would be held responsible. Her obsession had grown, and now it was personal. I could hear the fear in people's voices as they repeated her words, almost verbatim. It was like living in a snow globe where every movement set off tremors of tension. I gathered my family in the living room, my mind racing. "This is war," I said quietly but with determination. "She thinks she can bully us into submission with paperwork and threats, but we know the truth. This party is legal, this party is ours, and we're not backing down." The hours passed in a mix of preparation and anxiety. Every sound outside made me tense, every crunch of a tire in the driveway, every knock at the door. I couldn't be sure if it was Karen herself or someone delivering another veiled threat from the HOA. And all the while, the decorations glowed in defiance, twinkling like little beacons of resistance. By evening, the emails escalated again. Karen was now claiming she would involve the city inspectors, citing noise ordinances and safety concerns. My heart raced. City inspectors meant authority, paperwork, and the possibility of fines, but I refused to let panic take over. I reminded myself we were following the rules, we were documenting everything, and the truth was on our side. I walked outside, surveying the decorations for the 100th time that day. The snow machine hissed, the lights sparkled, and the smell of cocoa lingered in the air. I felt the familiar thrill, the mixture of fear and defiance that comes from knowing someone is trying to stop you, and yet nothing can break your resolve. And then I realized something important. Karen wasn't just trying to stop a party, she was trying to control our happiness. And controlling happiness is impossible, not when it's fueled by community, laughter, and the spirit of giving. I turned to my family and neighbors who had gathered despite the threats. "She doesn't understand one thing," I said, my voice steady, my eyes glowing with determination. "Christmas isn't about rules, it's about us, and no amount of paperwork, fines, or emails can take that away." That night, as the street fell quiet except for the faint hum of the snow machines, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was plotting her next move. The tension was electric, thick enough to cut with a knife. And I knew one thing for certain: the next time she came, it wouldn't be just words on a page. She was coming in person. I tightened my scarf, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "Bring it on, Karen. We're ready for whatever you throw at us." I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, not just with plans for the party, but with thoughts of Karen. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see her clipboard, her frown, the way she measured every little decoration as if our happiness was some sort of violation. It was exhausting just thinking about it, but underneath the exhaustion, a plan was forming. See, there was something Karen didn't know, something that would change everything. I had recently become the mayor of our town. Most people thought it was a joke when I won just a tiny local election, a whimsical attempt to shake things up. But it wasn't a joke, it was official, legal, and binding. I had powers, authority, and the ability to override petty neighborhood squabbles. And Karen had no clue. The next morning, I walked down the street with a quiet sense of purpose. The neighbors were already busy, some sneaking in last-minute decorations, others nervously glancing at their phones to see if Karen had sent more emails. I greeted them with a calm smile and whispered, "Don't worry, today we fight smart." Some of them looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Smart?" one neighbor asked. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer fully, I just winked. That little wink carried a promise: things were about to change. Karen, of course, had no idea. She was still orchestrating her little surveillance operation, checking emails, taking photos, probably practicing the speech she'd give about fines and violations. She was confident, cocky even, completely unaware that the playing field had tilted beneath her. I spent the morning preparing. I printed official documents, permits, authorizations, mayoral approvals, all stacked neatly in a folder labeled, almost sarcastically, "For Karen's eyes only." Every string of lights, every sound system, every inflatable reindeer was accounted for, documented, and legally approved. If Karen tried to escalate, we wouldn't just be ready. We would have the law, the city, and the mayor's office on our side. And then, just to make it perfect, I organized the neighbors into small teams. One group handled decorations, one managed the music, and one kept an eye out for Karen. There was strategy now, precision in every move. What had started as chaos and fear was now a well-oiled operation. The energy was different. The kids ran around like little generals, carrying ornaments and delivering messages. Adults whispered instructions and gave quick smiles, their confidence growing as they realized that this year Christmas wasn't just about fun, it was about standing together. I took a moment to look at the glowing lights, the fake snow sparkling in the morning sun, and felt a rush of pride. This wasn't just a party anymore, it was resistance. And the best part, Karen had no idea that her rules didn't apply when the mayor himself, or in this case myself, had approved everything. By midday, the tension had shifted. Karen was still out there, probably plotting her next move, but she was blind to the fact that I was ready for her. Every camera, every clipboard, every threat she threw at us was now powerless against the combination of community, preparation, and legal authority. I gathered everyone in the yard, my voice steady but filled with energy. "Listen up," I said. Karen thinks she can stop us with threats and paperwork. She doesn't know that we're ready. Today we decorate, we sing, we celebrate, and we do it legally. Nothing she can do will ruin this Christmas. Not today, not ever." The neighbors cheered, kids squealed, and I could see the spark of hope returning in everyone's eyes. It was the kind of moment that makes your chest swell with pride, the kind of moment that proves community and courage can overcome even the most relentless bully. And then I smiled to myself because I knew the moment of truth was coming. Karen would arrive, she would see the decorations, the people, the music, and she would think she had power. And then she would see the folder, the permits, the mayoral approval. That was when her face would change. That was when the entire dynamic would shift. For now, the neighborhood was buzzing with anticipation, a quiet confidence that only comes when you know you're ready. I looked at the lights, the decorations, the smiling faces around me and whispered, "Let's see how she handles this." The real showdown was about to begin, and this time I wasn't just defending a Christmas party. I was about to show Karen that joy, law, and community together are unstoppable. I knew she was coming, there was no doubt about it. By mid-afternoon, I could see her SUV creeping down the street again, slow and deliberate like some predatory bird circling its prey. My heart raced, not with fear but with anticipation. Everything we had prepared, every permit, every string of lights, every ounce of planning, it all led to this moment. Karen stepped out of her SUV, clipboard in hand, her heels crunching against the snow as she surveyed the yard. She looked around, her face a mix of fury and disbelief. "I told you," she snapped, voice trembling with barely contained rage. "This is a violation of HOA rules. The noise, the lights, the decor, it's excessive. You are breaking the rules, and I will." I held up a hand, calm, steady, and completely in control. "Karen," I said, letting the words sink slowly, "I don't think you understand the situation." I stepped aside and pulled out the folder I had prepared earlier, thick, official-looking, labeled with bold letters, authorized by the mayor. Her eyes flicked down to the folder, then back up at me. Confusion crept into her face, the kind that makes people falter because they don't know what's coming next. I opened it and began pulling out the documents, showing every single permit, every official authorization, every legal signature confirming that this party was fully sanctioned. "This event," I explained, voice calm but firm, "is fully permitted. As the mayor of this town, I have the authority to approve gatherings, decorations, and festivities. Everything here is legal. There is nothing you can do to stop it." For a moment she just stared. Her clipboard wavered in her hands. The neighbors were silent, holding their breath, watching this power shift unfold in real time. The children, sensing the tension, clutched at each other's hands, their excitement mixed with awe. Karen opened her mouth, probably to spew another threat, but nothing came out. She sputtered, blinked rapidly, and finally muttered, But the rules." I smiled slightly. "Karen," I said, leaning in just a little, "the rules apply to everyone except when the mayor authorizes an event. That's the law." Her face went from red to pale in a matter of seconds, disbelief written across every line. She looked like she had just been told gravity didn't exist, like the world she had meticulously built in her mind was crumbling before her eyes. Every threat she had ever made suddenly became powerless, irrelevant, and meaningless. The crowd erupted into cheers. Neighbors clapped, children jumped, and the energy of the street shifted entirely. What had been tension, fear, and dread only moments ago transformed into joy, laughter, and the unmistakable glow of victory. The Christmas lights seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were celebrating the moment. Karen tried to speak again, but her words came out in a jumbled mess, a weak attempt at regaining authority that had vanished the moment she realized she had no power over this. Her fists clenched, her eyes darted, and then she finally did something I didn't expect. She turned and walked away. The clipboard swung in her hand like a defeated flag, and I could hear her muttering under her breath about rules, ordinances, and fines that no longer existed. I turned to the neighbors, letting them soak in the moment. "See," I said softly, a smile tugging at my lips. "This is what happens when you stand together, when you plan smart, when you refuse to let someone else steal your joy." The children ran up to me, faces glowing, eyes wide with admiration. "You're like Santa," one of them exclaimed. I laughed, ruffling their hair, but inside I knew it wasn't about me, it was about all of us. The community, the families, the laughter that couldn't be silenced. That night, as the lights flickered across the street, I could still see Karen's SUV at the end of the block, parked and empty, a silent reminder of the obstacle we had just overcome. The tension had dissipated, replaced by a triumphant energy that made every decoration, every cookie, every twinkling light feel like a victory banner. For the first time since this all began, I felt a sense of calm. The storm had passed, at least for now, and though I knew Karen might return, the rules had changed. This neighborhood, this party, this joy, it was untouchable. I glanced at the glowing lights, the children laughing, the neighbors smiling. "Merry Christmas," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else, and for the first time that season it felt like Christmas had truly come early. The night after Karen's humiliating realization, I thought we had seen the worst of it. I was wrong. The next morning, a flurry of messages and calls hit my phone. Karen wasn't gone, she was plotting. She had apparently called the HOA board, the city office, and even some local compliance inspectors, claiming that our Christmas party was out of control and posing serious neighborhood disruption. She wanted to escalate again. But this time things had changed. The neighbors were no longer scared. After seeing Karen falter in front of the Merrill documents, they were energized, emboldened, ready to fight in their own way. I could feel it, the shift in energy, like the entire street was suddenly humming with a quiet, determined power. I stepped outside, hands in my coat pockets, surveying the scene. Decorations sparkled like a million little stars. Snow machines puffed clouds of artificial snow that drifted lazily across the yard. Kids raced around with hot cocoa in hand, their cheeks rosy, their eyes shining. And the neighbors, they were working together like a well-rehearsed team, hanging garlands, adjusting lights, and even improvising new decorations that would make Karen's head spin if she ever laid eyes on them. Karen arrived again, SUV creeping down the street like some ominous shadow, her face set in that same grim scowl. But now she had no fear. Instead, she had fury and desperation. She stomped toward me, muttering under her breath about ordinances, violations, and fines that simply didn't exist. "Enough is enough," she barked. "This ends today. I will not allow this chaos to continue. These lights, this music, everything is illegal, and you will." I raised a hand and the neighbors hushed. I reached for the folder, showing her the permits and Merrill approvals again, calmly and deliberately. "Karen," I said, "you tried to stop us yesterday. You failed. Today you have one choice: leave or watch this neighborhood celebrate Christmas the way it deserves." Her mouth opened, then closed. She sputtered, waved her clipboard, and finally, furious, defeated, and completely powerless, she spun on her heels and stormed back to her SUV. She drove off, muttering about rules and fines that could no longer touch us. The street erupted. Neighbors cheered, children squealed, and even the adults couldn't help but laugh. The energy was contagious, wild, joyous. It wasn't just a Christmas party anymore. It was a celebration of resilience, of defiance, of unity. I watched my neighbors and felt a swelling pride. The decorations sparkled brighter than ever, almost as if they reflected the joy and courage of everyone present. This was what community looked like. People standing together, refusing to be intimidated, refusing to let one person dictate happiness. Even the kids joined in the celebration with extra gusto, launching small snowball fights with the fake snow, running between the lights and inflatables. Their laughter was infectious, bouncing off the houses, down the street, and up into the night sky. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. Karen didn't just underestimate me, she underestimated all of us. She didn't see the spirit, the determination, the stubborn joy of a neighborhood that refused to let someone steal its happiness. We had turned fear into laughter, threats into triumph, and intimidation into unity. The lights seemed to shine brighter, the music sounded sweeter, and even the bitter cold couldn't dampen the warmth of what we had created. By the end of the night, the street was glowing with celebration. Carolers sang from door to door, neighbors swapped cookies and cocoa, and every decoration twinkled like it had a life of its own. Karen was gone. The party had survived, stronger than anyone, including her, could have imagined. I stepped back, hands in my pockets, watching the scene unfold. Children laughing, neighbors smiling, lights shimmering in every direction. I felt the weight of everything we had fought for settle into a quiet, triumphant peace. And as I looked toward the horizon, I whispered to myself, a smile tugging at my lips, "This is what Christmas is supposed to feel like, and no one, not even Karen, can take that away." The night finally arrived, the night of the Christmas party's triumph. After days of tension, threats, and relentless intimidation, our neighborhood was alive with light, laughter, and the kind of warmth that no HOA rule could ever take away. Every house along the block glowed like it had swallowed the North Pole whole. Snow machines puffed clouds of sparkling fake snow into the chilly air. Carolers roamed the streets, their voices echoing between the houses, and the smell of fresh cookies and cocoa drifted like magic over every lawn. I stepped outside, feeling the crisp winter air on my face, and took in the scene. Neighbors were dancing between the decorations, children were squealing with excitement, and even the stray dog from down the street had joined the celebration, wearing a tiny Santa hat that somehow made the night feel even more perfect. The energy was electric, contagious, unstoppable. And somewhere across the street I knew Karen was watching. I had seen her SUV parked at the end of the block earlier, the faint silhouette of her inside, probably muttering about rules and violations that no longer mattered. But this time I didn't feel tension or dread. I felt triumph. She had tried to control us, intimidate us, and take away our joy, but she had failed spectacularly. The final moment of victory came in the most satisfying way. I noticed her looking at our yard, the lights reflecting off her frown, and then unbelievably her SUV got stuck in the fake snow we had deliberately piled near the edge of the driveway as part of the decorations. She tried to maneuver it, tires spinning uselessly, while the rest of the neighborhood watched in quiet, smug amusement. I didn't gloat, I simply shook my head and smiled. Sometimes poetic justice has its own timing. I turned to the neighbors, raising my hands to quiet the crowd for a moment. "This," I said, my voice strong, proud, and full of emotion, "is what happens when we refuse to let fear control us, when we stand together, when we celebrate joy no matter how loud, how bright, or how disruptive someone thinks it is." The applause that followed wasn't just for the lights, the snow, or even the cookies. It was for unity, for resilience, for proving that one person's obsession cannot overshadow the spirit of a community. Children cheered, families hugged, and even the cold December air seemed warmer somehow, infused with the energy of victory. As the evening went on, I wandered the street, speaking with neighbors, laughing, sharing stories of past Christmases, and watching as everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest resident, felt a shared sense of pride. This wasn't just a party anymore, it was a statement, a celebration of togetherness, defiance, and the power of standing up for what's right. I found a quiet moment near the glowing tree at the center of our street, lights twinkling like stars caught in the branches. I thought about Karen, about the tension, the threats, the fear, and then about the joy we had reclaimed. A smile crept across my face. This wasn't about revenge or proving someone wrong. It was about protecting the heart of our community and making sure happiness won. "Look at this," I whispered to myself. "This is why we do it. This is why we fight. This is what matters." The rest of the night passed like a dream. Laughter, music, and joy filled every corner of the block. Karen never returned. Her threats, her rules, her obsession, they had all collapsed under the weight of community, courage, and legal authority. As I finally stepped inside, exhausted but happy, I glanced out the window one last time. The lights sparkled, the snow drifted lazily, and I could hear the faint echo of carols in the distance. My heart swelled. We had done more than throw a Christmas party. We had reclaimed our joy, our neighborhood, and our right to celebrate without fear. And in that moment, I knew the truth. No matter how obsessed, how controlling, or how relentless someone like Karen could be, there was one thing they could never take away: the spirit of a community, the laughter of children, the warmth of people standing together. I raised a mug of cocoa toward the glowing street and whispered, softly but firmly, "Merry Christmas, everyone. This one's for all of us." And as the lights twinkled in the quiet night, I finally felt it. Peace, victory, and the unforgettable magic of a Christmas that no HOA president could ever touch. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one, the truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.